We're encouraging boards and executive leadership to take this time to be bold. It's not a time for hunkering down. It's a time for identifying big challenges and going after those challenges in new and fresh ways.
The structural deficit really continues on as far as the eye can see. We have to make some changes, somehow, somewhere, to bring things back into line. We have had a structural deficit for the last couple of years that we've been able to get through with some one-time things. But going forward, we're going to have to change revenues or spending, or both, in significant ways. Our deficit right now is certainly going to be more than 10% of our budget, probably much more. And that's going to be the starting point for the next budget.
As we've seen reductions in state revenue, we should not expect that the local governments are going to be able or willing to raise property taxes to fill the decline. There continues to be, I think, expectations from policymakers as well as just residents in general that we realign our services and look at how we better deliver services. And that means we look for first partnerships with nonprofits, with other local governments, as well as with the state government. We're in conversation with other counties, for example, about where are the opportunities here to better deliver services from a county perspective. We need to be in conversation with the various nonprofits about what are the partnership opportunities and what are the things they should be doing versus what are the things we should do as direct services.
We have to find the most innovative, the most practical ways of getting the work done, because we are still required to do much of this work to keep our children and those with disabilities and our elder citizens safe. But we do not have the same amount of dollars to spread around to our partners who've had contracts with us in the past. That makes it difficult for us, that makes it difficult for our partners, and it certainly makes it difficult for those who we need to provide services of protection and support for.
Good board members read the paper and they remain knowledgeable about what's happening in the environment, what's happening in state government. Whether the state government is facing a shortfall. And if your organization, a nonprofit, is funded partly by contracts with government to deliver services, that's a signal for you to ask, can it happen to us? Can it affect us?
If there's one thing that nonprofits, their boards of directors and staff really need to be mindful of as they do their planning for the short term and the long term, it's really that philanthropy cannot fill these gaps that are created by budget shortfalls and downturns in the economy. The times have changed. It's going to require nonprofits, philanthropists, business, government, and the community to all sit down together to try to figure out how we move through this period of time. It's going to require us to work in new ways, to shed some of the perceived excesses. I'm not sure there are excesses, but there are always efficiencies that can be gained in our work.
Well, what it means for a lot of people who are delivering services, trying to work with state and federal money, is that we will be looking at getting more information, tracking what's going on, and probably having providing less flexibility for the use of those funds. So that each time you get some of that federal money, each time you get some of that state money, we'll be wanting to know on a monthly, quarterly, certainly an annual basis, what's happening, and making sure that everyone knows your success or your failures.
Organizations should be thinking about whether or not they're organized right to get the maximum impact for the resources that they have available. This is also a good time for organizations to think about whether or not they should still be in existence, whether or not there's a new configuration of their work that might do a better job advancing their mission. This is a time to think about joint ventures, collaborations, and even mergers to see if through some combination, you can make a bigger difference in the community.
We cannot afford the number of nonprofits, organizations that we have in this region. It's not that they don't do good work. It's not that they're not serving a need. It's just that we're unable to support is the multiplicity of organizations, the multiplicity of overhead that we have today. So we have to look at how do we preserve the good work and try to wring out the savings relative to that. And those are very difficult discussions because I know every nonprofit is very mission oriented. They want to do what they do best. But we have to look for merger opportunities and look at ways to combine back offices so that we can wring out savings here if we want to continue the good work that they do.
Things are changing too quickly. We no longer can work with the policy that the budget's set at the beginning of the year and then it's set in stone. Nothing is set in the stone. The revenue side is changing, but the expense side is changing too. So we really have to think about what are the mechanisms that we're going to have in place at board meetings, at leadership team meetings, at program level, where we're thinking about what's flexible, what can we change, what's variable, where can we really kind of empower people to make decisions rather than having it all top down, every decision made at one level. There has to be much more flexibility and kind of give built into the system.
Well, nonprofit organizations should understand the demographic and economic trends that face us, but it's also important that we are part of an active discussion that shapes that future. We need to be partners with government to talk about the role of government, the kind of funding that's needed, and how we can best work together to provide quality services in our communities.
Another key part of this is nonprofits have a lot of on-the-ground knowledge of how these programs actually get carried out and what impact they have on people. And the state legislature, the governor's office relies on a feedback loop of how is it going, what are the changing needs of our communities.
Well, no one doubts that the times are certainly changing. With deficits like we're facing into the future of Minnesota having $6 billion in the next biennium, the world will not be the same. No one can count on stable funding, but we can count on smart funding for important projects. There's essential things we do, important things we do, and nice things we do. Well, it's nice to have nice things, but I don't think we're doing so many nice things. But the essential, the important ones have to be defined and focused on in collaboration with the legislature and the state funding and the federal, along with the locals that will be I think the grease and to make it smooth over. And I think if we don't partner well, very bad things will happen. If we do our work right, I think we'll actually be quite pleased with what comes out, and we will preserve the things that are most important to all of us. That gives me some reason to be optimistic.
We know the next few years is going to be really tough for human services in general. And I think what we all have to remember is we can reinvent government, we can redesign services, we can do things better. People have been working very effectively, but we've got to keep in mind what are our greatest needs and how can we all work together better.
So what we need to do is, first of all, don't panic. Have faith. We have faith in you. We want you to have faith in the families. But what we really need to do is we need to hear from you. We need the best and the brightest thinkers, the most creative thinkers, to come over to the Capitol, and let's work collaboratively in figuring out how we shape what we're going to do forward in the future.
Your leadership voice, your leadership commitment, your leadership values are truly tested when you're challenged. And as my grandmother used to say, those times will separate the sheep from the goats. They will tell us who is the effective leader, who has the stamina, who has the moral fortitude to lead. And quite often you don't see who has those special attributes until a community is challenged.
Change really starts with organizations being willing to talk about the big questions that they're facing. And if they can honestly and freshly attack those big questions, they stand the best chance of making a true difference in the work that they're trying to do.